In today's Locked On Canadiens, what is the short-term future of goaltending for this team? Plus, Riley Kidney has signed his entry-level contract. Emil Heineman is finally skating, and we have one of our player reviews, and all of that's coming up in today's Locked On Canadiens.
For Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to episode 609 of your first listen of the day. We are free and available 5 days a week wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Please subscribe, please share, please tell your friends. My name is Laura Saba, also known as The Active Stick, and I'm joined as always by Scott Matla of Habs Eyes on the Prize. Scott, how are you doing on what in Montreal is a beautiful, beautiful evening?
It's very weird is I didn't expect there to be like actual news today or like anything. It feels like the middle of the week is where it kind of lulls and then we get a weekend news dump. Like we sandwich the week basically in that there's, the two pieces of bread and then in the middle it's just nothing because the Canadiens are in their off season. But we got a little bit. So it's actually keeping me on my toes just a bit more than I was anticipating going into, Cinco de Mayo, Kentucky Derby weekend, Mother's Day weekend, where I'm busy outside of the realm of hockey. And for that, I'm actually a little bit grateful. It makes it so it's not a boring off season. We're not just sitting on our hands right now.
Absolutely. And there's always stuff to talk about. I mean, even when there isn't news, we do have a bunch of stuff planned, like, for example, draft previews, prospect reviews, player reviews for the regular season. And some interesting stuff has come up as we do that. A couple of programming notes. Scott is off next week, so I have a whole host of guest co-hosts that I've lined up that I'm really excited to talk to. But on tomorrow's mailbag episode, we have Mike Obrand, also known as Habs Laughs. So please send us your mailbag questions to lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com, or you can tweet them to us at LO_Canadiens. As always, I will tweet out the call for mailbag questions on Thursday morning, so you can ask us your mailbag questions. In the meantime, let's talk about the two pieces of news before we go on to talk to what Kent Hughes said about goaltending. Scott, Emil Heineman has been seen skating. It is no contact, but it's a very positive sign considering it came across the ocean with what we assume is a concussion.
Yeah, and it's not
upper body injury.
And it's not just that he's skating with the team at practice. He's with the Rocket, which is a step forward. He was working with the skills coach Adam Nicholas in previous things, just working one-on-one things and reviewing what he's doing. So they were able to keep him at least, as game ready as one can get without putting on a uniform. And he's in the contact jersey. And now it seems like I don't want to say he's close, but he's one step closer to being ready to play. And before people freak out, the Rocket had practice today before they head to Syracuse tomorrow. Matthias Norlinder was not in the top 6 rotation for a defenseman. But if you are Jean-Francois Houle, you are looking at this right now and going, I know what I'm getting out of these 6 here. They are the ones who got us to the playoffs. I'm not going to change something right now. That doesn't mean he's not going to play because injuries happen, bad performances happen, this and that. He's got to go with what he knows and what got them there. And right now, Norlinder is getting back into the swing of things here. You go with what you know. So before that panic starts, everyone take a deep breath. It's okay, I promise.
And real quick, obviously, the Laval start their series against the Syracuse Crunch on Friday evening. It is not on RDS, but it's on AHL TV. And it is also being broadcast on the radio. The home games are on RDS, which if you're in Montreal, you can watch those. We'll obviously be following that run. In the meantime, the Canadiens have also signed an 8-year-old to a 3-year entry-level contract. Riley Kidney has signed his entry-level contract, and I know he's not 8 years old, but he certainly looks it.
Yeah, Laura sent me a photo and went, the Canadiens signed a teenager, and I went, yeah, and then she sends me the photo, and I go, oh, like a teenager. He's a literal child looking in this, and the thing is, we talked a lot about Joshua Waugh in the Canadiens organization, and we really should, put some respect on the name of Riley Kidney, who finished the season with 100 points for the Acadie Bathurst Tetons, 100 points in 66 games, 7th in the QMJHL. Obviously, Joshua Waugh was number 1 with 119 points. And in 12th place was Xavier Simoneau with 86 points in 48 games, because that's insane. The 2021 draft is shaping up really well for the Montreal Canadiens. Obviously, Joshua Waugh is very good. Xavier Simoneau has been good. Riley Kidney's been very good. There's a lot of talent in those later rounds that the Canadian scouting staff identified, and it would be remiss of me to not compliment them on finding what they did. And it's not often you have two guys at the top of this, neither of whom were drafted in the first round. One was a 2nd-round pick, one was a 5th-round pick. It's impressive work, and I think both guys are going to get a real nice long look in the preseason next year. I think Waugh, just with his shooting talent alone, might have the inner edge to getting to the NHL next year. I think Riley Kidney will go back to the Q for one more year at this point, which isn't the end of the world. But Kid piled up 70 assists in 66 games. If he just counted assists, he was over a point per game. I do have some concerns. He's 100 points and is only plus 13. And I don't know if that's just because the Tetons are not great defensively or something. But I look at that and that kind of makes me go, okay, is he producing purely on the power play, or is the team just kind of struggling? And I'm looking at the plus minus across the board here. The top on the team was plus 25. So it might just be a defensively, the team's not very good.
It is the Q, right?
Yeah. Goals go in like, burgers into my face on a regular day. It's the Q. Everything, just throw it out the window at that point. So I'm very excited. I wasn't super pumped on the pick at first. There were other names on the board that I had looked at that I was more intrigued about. And, he's done a lot to sway me on that. We're going to talk with Matt Drake, who's been watching the Q heavily, especially for Waugh as it is. And I'm very excited to see what he does with that next step. And Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon are getting those young guys locked up before too long. And I think it's part of the process. It's not going to be like, yeah, wow, they did this amazing thing, but it's nice to see good play being rewarded with entry-level contracts and the like.
I think, they're getting a lot of administrative work done. And as we talk about the Habs 5 days a week, and Scott is kind of the AHL person, and I'm kind of just a random person who watches a lot of Habs games. We're not Q experts, but we do know a bunch. So, and some people with scouting backgrounds and stuff like that. So I know Rick B, a frequent listener and commenter, was talking about Joshua Waugh. We are going to have full-on episode on Joshua Waugh. He deserves it. He merits it. And that's coming up. It's just one of our off-season things. In the meantime, we're going to talk a little bit about what Kent Hughes says about goaltending and why everybody's up in arms over it. And that is coming up in literally just one moment. But first, I want to tell you about something that I use because I need it. I have a very busy life and I'm trying to keep track of my health. I'm trying to get my nutrients. And I started taking Athletic Greens because I wanted to take control of my health in my out of control life. It supports better sleep quality and it supports recovery, especially since I started working out again. It supports mental clarity. I've got 2 jobs and alertness, and I need that. It's the one thing with all of the best things. Athletic Greens uses the best of the best products based on the latest science with constant product iterations and third-party testing. With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, your focus, and aging. It supports all of the things, and I will be lying if I said that I'm not vain and that I do need that support for aging. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health just like I'm doing and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's just 1 scoop and a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health, just like I'm doing, and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, Scott, let's talk about some things that are going on. As we know, the Canadiens ended the season with a giant question mark over Carey Price's health. This one is not going to be a quick resolution. It's going to take place over the course of a couple of months. I think that even if he gets negative news, he's going to fight and push until it's really a situation where he cannot play. So the Canadiens right now can't do all that much because they're waiting on that. I think it says a lot about the respect that they have for Carey Price in that they will allow him the time that he needs. Also, just his stature in goaltending as a whole. I do think, though, that as Kent Hughes said, that there is a big question mark. And there's nobody right now in the system that they feel is going to replace Carey Price. So people saw that and they went crazy.
So I caught bits and pieces of this as I was running around and decided to not engage with it because I value my sanity right now. And he said that I think I might have the quote a little bit off here because I'm translating it, was there's no one in the organization right now that is an everyday starter right now. And I look at that and I go, that's very much true. I appreciate a lot of what Jake Allen has done. I think he is a very good goalie. I do not think he's an everyday goalie anymore. Cayden Primeau has not proven that he is even a regular NHL like rotation option at this current point. And outside of that, they do not have anyone else at the professional level. I'm counting Samuel Montembeault as a free agent at this point. And Frederick Deschaux is still in Europe. Joe Verbatic is in the OHL playoffs, and Jakub Dobiš still has more time in college. It's all far from proven things, and as alarmist as people are going to be about this, I don't think he's wrong. Carey Price, I don't think, is an everyday starter at this point in his life. I think he is your regular starter and that he will play the majority of the games. Like, it might be 3 on 1 off where it used to be like 5 or 6 and then 1 off. And I think that changes things. I don't think Kent Hughes is wrong having a blunt, honest opinion about the Canadiens' goaltending situation makes it very important for, brings it to the forefront. It's like, we need to address this. They're not going to hope it gets better automatically here. And I look at Carey Price and I go, if they get bad news or unclear news, I can see the Canadiens trading for a goalie. We heard not Ilya Sorokin, Ilya Samsonov from the Washington Capitals was an option they were looking at. I wouldn't be shocked to see them be aggressive in free agency, looking for a 1B to split with Jake Allen if Carey Price is not going to be good to go. And the honesty is a good thing here. It's scary, but I'd rather be told the truth than, no, he'll be okay. He just needs a little time, a little recovery. It's okay. It's fine. He's having surgery. He's dead. He's been reincarnated. Oh, he died again. Everything's on fire. The world has ended. It's okay. Carey Price returns from IR. Like, I'd rather have the honesty up front with that.
I agree with that. I was going to just propose something. All right. So we have had a lot of question marks about Cayden Primeau. Up until he got to the NHL level, he had been really good in like the college ranks, and prior to that, he had like won so many things, and then he got to the AHL and he's been pretty good in the AHL. Right now, there's a little bit of a confidence problem, I think. But thankfully, the Rocket do have another serviceable goaltender who's been really, really positive for them. What if? We talked about this, and, our good friend Paul Barnshaw, who was a goalie himself, said that he needs to play more to become better, right? Cayden Primeau. So there's like 2 different schools of thoughts, because we have another frequent listener who isn't super sold on Cayden Primeau. And so for me, I think here's what you do. If you know that Carey Price can't go, right? You've got Connor Bedard in the finish line, right? You put Cayden Primeau in the NHL and you make him figure it out. He plays lots of games, he loses a bunch, but then his tracking gets better, his instincts get better, his expectations get better, his reads get better. Why not do that? This is just like me like trying to like throw an argument in there. I'm not saying that's what the Canadians should do. I'm saying, what if they do that? Argue with me now.
I look at that and I go, yeah, like that seems like a good way forward. But at the same time, I'm like, this is someone they've invested good money in as a goaltending prospect. And I have behind me from Sport Track, I have the free agent, like unrestricted free agent goalie market. And Marc-Andre Fleury is on there. Mikko Koskinen, Darcy Kemper, Thomas Greiss, Yaroslav Halak, Jonas Korpisalo, Corey Schneider, Braden Holtby, Martin Jones, Jack Campbell, David Rittich, Casey DeSmith, Phoenix Copley, and then it's just 8 feet of crap, to be quite honest. And I'm not totally not sold that if Carey Price isn't ready to go, that they don't look at a guy like a David Rittich, a Braden Holtby, who would probably be relatively affordable considering he hasn't had great years. He was injured in Dallas. Someone like Jonas Korpisalo, who hasn't had a great year in Columbus either. And they 1A and 1B it with Jake Allen. And they go, Caden Primo, you are staying in the AHL unless all of our goalies explode again. And you're going to play, they're all playing 72 games next year. So like you're going to play 45 games next year for the Rocket, maybe 40, depending on the season. Show us that you can earn this spot. And if you can't do it, at that point, you just kind of go, okay, is his ceiling an AHL goalie? And you go from there. And then after that, if Carey Price isn't back, then I go, you have to put him in the NHL. If it doesn't work, you put him on waivers. And if you lose him, you go, well, that sucks. And you just move on with things. But I look at this market here and it's ripe with that 1B option that I think this team would need if Carey Price is not going to be ready for next season. And I don't think many of them are going to be overly expensive. Mikko Koskinen is not going to be a $4.5 million goalie. Marc-Andre Fleury is not going to be a $7 million goalie. At least I wouldn't think so anymore. There are options for it, and it gives Caden Primo the time to develop because here's the thing is he either figures it out or that next wave of goaltending prospects, and I assume they will take one in this upcoming draft as well, is going to be ready sooner rather than later. And guess what? It's you crap or you become a starting goalie. There's no in between here at this point. The rebuild moves on whether you're ready or not if you're Caden Primo.
Got it. I understand. I feel like it's going to be really interesting to see what they end up doing.
I'm not against your idea for what it's worth. It just scares me because I'm like, oh no, I want, the goalies to actually develop. They haven't developed a goalie since
Carey Price.
Yeah, which was
2007, 2008.
And they can't even claim credit for developing Carey Price because he spent like 3 seconds in the AHL, won a cup, and was like, I'm the best goddamn goalie in the league, and went to the NHL. So they can't even claim goalie development on that one. So they got to do it sooner or later. Everyone else can. Why can't you?
That's just another thing that Carey Price does. He does it all, and he also develops himself. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And as you know, we will be extremely sad if Carey Price can't go. It's we're not going to think about that. It's just because it was brought up, and then people were freaking out about it. And honestly, you've got a lot of options. You can remember that Connor Bedard is at the end of the finish line as well next year. I'm just going to throw that out there. But in the meantime, we are going to finish with our player review. Today, we're just doing one segment of it, obviously, because there was stuff to talk about. And don't forget that tomorrow is our mailbag episode with Mike O'Brien. We're going to start the episode by talking about power play and penalty kill, and then we're going to move on to mailbag questions. So you can email us at lockedoncanadians@gmail.com or tweet us at LO_Canadians, and we'll be back in one moment with our player review for Chris Wideman. But first, let me tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball, and this weekend's run to the Roses as the Kentucky Derby is back. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. And if you're watching the NHL playoffs, you know that there are some compelling storylines here, so check out betonline.net. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Scott, here's a question. Chris Wideman in Montreal, was it better than expected or worse than expected?
I feel like it's exactly. I am not overwhelmed. I am not underwhelmed. I am
Whelmed.
cromulently whelmed by Chris Wideman in that 27 points in 64 games as a primarily sixth defenseman with somewhat decent shot metrics in a very sheltered role. We've talked with Andrew Berkshire about this. He is a heavily sheltered player, which is good. The coaching staff understands his limitations. He was fine for under $1 million, brought in to be maybe a power play quarterback, and he was fine, not great, but he was better than the other options we had at the time. He was not Ben Sherratt on the power play. So it almost feels kind of like a cop-out to be like, he was fine, but at the same time, I look at that and I go, it's what he was brought in for. He was cheap. He was brought in to help kind of drive offense on those lower pairings and on the power play. 4 goals, 23 assists in 64 games on a bad Canadiens team. For a sixth defenseman, that's not awful, and I'm not opposed to keeping him as like a rotational option next year, depending on what they do with the defense, if they're drafting on defense or if they're going to add in free agency. I'm not opposed to that. Or did he play well enough that a team that needs that cheap depth as well, more than the Canadiens do, looks at that and goes, if he can do that on the Habs, what can he do with an actual like power player functioning offense? And if that's what the case, you let him go. He's 30 years old, but it was about as expected a season as I could have gotten out of any player on this team, I'm pretty sure.
I would absolutely agree with that. I think the thing that people kind of forget when they talk about Chris Wideman is how cheap he is and how short his contract was, right? It was definitely one of those things where he had to prove that he still belongs in the NHL after things went, I'm going to say down the drain in Ottawa. I don't want Sens fans in our comments. But he was kind of the scapegoat for something that happened. And he ended up trying to rebuild his career in the KHL. He got an opportunity to come back to the NHL. And I think that he just showed what he's able to do, which is, like you said, on a team that's the right fit. Now, the team really likes him. I don't know if he's just that good of a guy in the locker room or whatever, but they all say good things about him. And, to a man, and particularly the young guys like Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, they tend to kind of look to him as a sort of a veteran. He's 30 years old, right? And so he's a good fit for cheap. But I do think that he showed exactly what he is, and the Montreal Canadiens right now have to work really hard on developing defensemen to be part of their defensive core. And I think that if you look at it that way, and he's going to be the odd man out. That's, and we don't know what's going to happen with Jeff Petrie. A lot of people are saying, well, he's got a big contract, they should trade it if they can, but that's not necessarily a given, because they're only going to trade it if there's a good return. So that might not be the case, right? Especially since things are better between him and the team right now. So for me, Chris Wideman is just somebody that they're probably not going to re-sign, but I think that he did exactly what he was brought in to do. And it's not necessarily his fault as well that the power play in general kind of sucked.
And I look at it this way, is that in the AHL, Justin Barron is going to be coming up for a spot here full-time next year. Corey Schooneman is likely to get re-signed. They really like him, and I think he's going to try and crack this lineup. Caden Gooley is coming out of the WHL. Jordan Harris will be a full-time player. Matthias Norlinder will be here. There's a lot of spots, or there's a lot of guys for not a lot of spots here. Even if they do trade some pieces here, not every single one of these players is going to play. And at the same time, you need that cheap depth behind there. And like William Lagesson, I don't think is going to get re-signed. If they do, cool. I'd actually like to see what William Lagesson has as a player. He didn't really play a ton in Edmonton. And the Canadiens have a very fun way of, taking underappreciated defensemen out of Alberta and turning them into something. Look at Brett Kulak.
And Jeff Petrie.
It's very difficult to envision Wideman being a regular next year, But at the same time, I could see him being someone that, like, you're on the third pair. We're going to be sheltering you and Caden Gooley and you and Justin Barron and you in this, and seeing what we have out of this, and then moving those younger guys up and cycling people through on there. And then maybe he's a trade asset, maybe something like that. There's value in what Chris Wideman brought this year. He was not a superstar, and I don't feel bad saying that. He was in the top 10 for team scoring on a bad team, but at the same time, he could be a dime a dozen player in this league, and that doesn't mean they should re-sign him. It's a very interesting proposition for Kent Hughes, because if you trade Jeff Petrie and you let Chris Wideman walk, your top power play option becomes, with NHL experience, Alexander Romanov right now. And as we've talked about a lot, his decision-making leaves a lot to be desired right now. You don't want to just throw your young guys out there. You don't want to throw Norlinder and Barron out there and go, hey, make the power play work now, and overload them when they're trying to get their feet wet at 5-on-5. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing him back. He'd probably get a very similar contract and would very likely fetch something at the trade deadline. But if they let him walk, I just kind of go, yeah, that's what players that caliber do. They come and they go in and out like a revolving door sometimes.
Absolutely. And if you believe in the conventional wisdom that it takes defensemen longer time to develop, I think the Canadiens are in a unique position right now where they can develop their developing players in the NHL. Like, they don't have to do that in the AHL or whatever. Like you said, there's a lot of guys for not a lot of spots, but this is something that's really cool and interesting to follow, right? Thanks Chris Wideman for the memories if he doesn't come back. And if he does, well, I don't think it's going to be for a very long time. In the meantime, do not forget that tomorrow's our Friday mailbag episode. You can email us your questions at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can also tweet them at LO_Canadiens. Please follow my co-host Scott Matla at Scott Matla on Twitter. You can find me at The Active Stick. And when you're done listening to this, check out Locked On NHL. They are all over everything that's going on in the playoffs right now, including power rankings, predictions, reviews, talking about how bad the officiating is, everything. Locked On NHL is your go-to source after you're done listening to us. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.